it's an interesting time that you were in the Air Force. Like you joined in the mid 50s or late to mid 50s. There still would have been quite a few. We still had some Mustangs at the time in the RCF. I think mostly just for training purposes, right? But there would have been a few throwbacks to the Second World War, or even the Harvard.
Well, a lot of our flight commanders were what we called retreads from the war.
From the war.
And what wonderful people to have on.
No kidding.
As your idols in a fighter squadron.
Well, I bet, and like all these guys, your leadership all has combat experience, like extreme combat experience. So that must have been fantastic.
It was.
Any particular stories from those guys that come to mind?
I got a story that I'm not sure I should tell.
Oh, do tell. We'll edit it out.
I won't use any names.
Okay, don't use them. There's no names.
But I took off on a section of, well, it was a section of 4, but I was the wingman on my flight commander.
Okay.
And we had a really aggressive young fighter pilot. He was senior to me on the squadron. He'd been there for quite a while. And he had vowed that he was going to get this flight commander with the war experience. And as the saying goes, wax his ass.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there on my lead's wing. My gear are just coming up, and he breaks left. Now, I was the careful pilot.
Yes.
You weren't supposed to turn the saber, yaw the saber while the nose gear door was in transit, because it was a big door with light gear. And so he broke left, and I kept going straight, so my
gear door
came up. And the other thing that embarrassed me was that you weren't supposed to turn your gun sight on until you got airborne, because it was not supposed to be good for the gyros to unlock them when you're still bouncing on the ground. So my gun sight was off, and I didn't break with them because my nose gear was coming up. But what had happened, the reason he broke was that this Maverick had been waiting for him off the end of the runway, and as soon as and waiting for him to lift off, and then
he was going to dive in.
Came in behind him, and this flight commander was a war veteran.
He was a wily guy,
and there was no way he was going to let this guy have his ass. So he broke, and by the time my gear door closed, I rolled over, and I was right behind the Maverick. He dragged, and I followed him. My lead said, "Get him." Well, I didn't even have my gun sight on. I couldn't take pictures, but I'm going to stay with him. And we passed over the field. I suspect we were about 600 feet in the air. Passed over the field, and I was right on his tail. And I think he did a roll, which I followed through. And then I don't remember what happened after that, but we eventually we came down and landed and had to face the music.
Of course.
Well, typical of a wartime flight commander, he walked into the CO's office, the base commander's office, with the two of us in tow. The guy that
you and Maverick,
and he said, "John doesn't belong here. He did exactly what I told him to do, and he's not in this this issue." That was the end of it for me. The end of it. And they both, I don't know what they were awarded for their efforts.
Probably a little bit more than peeling potatoes.
But it was it was the brutal honesty of it, of this flight commander. He said, that boy was following my instructions, and he's not going to get in trouble for following my instructions. I'm going to take that.
You guys must have looked at these guys in awe.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
We all did, I think.
I know I do too, and unfortunately there's just not that many of them left, but
No.
it's very sad.
What they did for us in the Battle of Britain
Oh, yeah.
and the Second World War was just incredible.
You must feel very fortunate, though, that I've been kind of like an understudy to guys like those. Like you're almost in the footsteps of giants in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So we'll get back. We got a little off track there, but
Didn't
Sorry, go ahead.
I say, didn't we?
Oh, it's okay. It's a rambling conversation. That's what we like. So you were flying the DC-8 at CP Air.
Yes.
Right on. And then how did things progress after that? Because I remember you eventually ended up at ANA, was it?
Yes. It was a. I was very proud of myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a strange thing. I hope maybe it's just a personal thing. But now that I'm out of the business and away from it, I couldn't have asked myself to be a better pilot. But damn it, if I don't remember the bad things I did, rather than the good things.
I think we're all like that. Yes.
It kind of makes me angry sometimes that I just can't. I can't float along on a lovely cloud of how good I was.
Well, I think that's probably the hallmark of a good pilot when you dwell on the mistakes you make, try and.
But my progression in the airline was it was slow because I was on the last course of pilots that CP hired for about 3 or 4 years.
Oh, okay.
I was just hanging on by my fingertips for that time. Never got laid off. I was very grateful for that. But after the first 2 years of 6 months or a year of probation, and then I think it was 2 years before you started going on formula pay, I felt pretty vulnerable because I had 4 kids by that time.
Oof.
And they were all very young. My wife was very busy.
I bet.
And I was trotting off to places like Hong Kong and Rome, and she's doing all those deeds with 4 kids.
She's living the airline pilot's wife life.
Yeah. But she was really good with it. I flew the DC-8 for a few years, pretty good number of hours in it. Then I got on the DC-10. Beautiful, beautiful airplane. It was so much different from the DC-8. DC-8 was a heavy, it was a lovely flying machine, but the controls were just heavy as all get out. You had to work. I have to wonder whether a woman pilot could have handled a DC-8.
Oh, really?
Just
really
unless she was a weightlifter.
Yeah, okay.
It was a heavy flying machine from the control point of view. Flew well, landed well. If you put it in the right places, I did a few numbers on it. DC-10, on the other hand, I couldn't land it badly.
Really?
And for a guy with lots of pride, that's a lovely thing.
Absolutely. So you're like every pilot.
And it flew. It was light on the controls. It flew beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
Its problem was that it was kind of a hybrid on the flight control panel issue, and it didn't do everything right. It wasn't all intuitive. It caused we had a lot of pilots that didn't make it through the course.
Oh, really?
And had to go back to the DC-8. No, I won't say a lot. There were a few. But we weren't working with the best of equipment either at the time. The simulator we were using, which seemed to be the only one available, was pretty old, and when you wanted to swing the heading around, you couldn't. You had to go a click at a time. So here you are wanting to move the needle, 270 degrees?
Yeah, you'd be there for a minute.
And move it a click at a time while the captain's waiting for you to get it done.
Yeah, okay, that's...
So it was a bit frustrating, but oh, what a beautiful flying airplane it was. I really regret that it had as many problems as it did in its history, because, and I suppose it deserved them, but it was a great flying machine. The problem I had with it, the problem all of us had with it, was that if you had certain emergencies, the checklist was so long that you had to actually extend your flying time to get the checklist done. And I went from that to the Boeing 737, where the checklist is just almost a throwaway. And it's done. No matter what went wrong. It was a.
So you would have flown the Boeing 737 like the 200, 100 and 200 series, or the.
I got onto the 300 series.
Oh, so the classic. Yeah. Okay.
We didn't actually own any, but we rented some from the Irish on their off season.
Yep.
So that was the first I got a 737 with a good flight control panel, and it was a gem.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that very much.
I have 2,000 hours on the 37. It's a great airplane.
I went from that. I went into a supervisory position for a while, and I thought they were using me badly, because my contemporaries were stepping up to the DC-10 as captains and the 767 as captains, and they were holding me back on the 737, and I really didn't like it. So my boss and I got really upset about something at one time, and we both handed in our resignations.
Really?
Together.
Okay.
And the result of that was I got upgraded to 6-7 captain, and I would have liked to have been around long enough to fly the 7-7. I would have loved to be around long enough to fly the 787.
Oh, of course, yes.
But I couldn't think of a better airplane to end my career on. I mean, it was just a sweetheart. Couldn't ask for anything more out of an airplane. They couldn't overload it. They couldn't do anything bad to it. That was one of the issues we had with the DC-8. They always tried to keep uploading the payload and degrading the performance accordingly. But they couldn't do that on the 767. They just couldn't do it.
That's
great. It was beautiful. Well, we ended up with the first 75,000-pound engines in the industry. I think on the neat thing that I was very proud of Canadian at the time for doing was the same engine that they had in the 747, the 747-400. They would fly it on the 767 until it Timexed as a twin engine,
and then they put it on
and then they'd Timex it out on the 747.
Well, that's brilliant.
The engine. Yeah.
Wow.
I thought that was neat.
That's probably saving a lot of money too.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you finished your career on the 767.
I did, and in that time, a nasty first officer shamed me into accepting a leave of absence and going flying for Al Nippon Airways in Japan, because he said he needed a right seat or a left seat.
Oh, he's in your seat. He basically you're flying. He's like I am to you. He's like, hey, you're in my seat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I said,
Nothing's
okay.
changed.
So I went over and made a bundle of money in Japan for a couple of years.
That must have been quite the
It
experience.
was fun.
Yeah.
Very, very different.
Yeah, I bet.
But they're. I love the Japanese. I've used the word so many times, and I can't find it now. They're just everything is precise. In their operation. Everything has to be absolutely precise.
I've heard that from colleagues of mine who have flown with them.
It might be found frustrating, but I found it okay. And I finally learned to land a 767 with a nose wheel on the center line.
There you go.
Because they had a camera in it, and if you didn't put it on the center line, the passengers all knew.
So how many years did it take you? Like 20, so 30 years to learn?
28 years.
28 years to learn how to land an airliner on the center line. Well, good for you.
Yeah. And it was unfortunate that our stint with A&A was supposed to be 42 months. But their bubble burst economically just about the time we arrived there.
I see.
So they spent the 2 years I was there, they were trying to find ways to get rid of us. They finally bought us out, and I came back, flew for, at that time, Canadian was having its own problems.
Yes.
But at that time, they were having a little bit of an upswing. So they needed the pilots back. So I came back and flew for them for the rest of my,
Oh, wow.
until I reached 60.
Mm-hmm.
Retired there at 98. And about a month before I retired, a friend out in Vancouver who had been over at A&A, served over at A&A with me, called me up and said, the contractor has been looking for you. He's lost all your contact information, but he's looking for pilots for an upstart airline in Japan. And I'm going. Why don't you give him a call and come and join me? So I gave the contractor a call, and I was hired. So I spent 3 years, from age 60 to, the reason they could do it is that the Japanese Aviation Civil Authority had increased the
age
age
limit to 65.
to 63.
Oh, 63, okay. Okay.
So I got three more years flying 767, and I was just in love with the airplane. What could you ask more?
Yeah, of course. Maybe a T-33.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't loop for 767.
No,
unfortunately.
definitely shouldn't try.
But I must say, that's the one thing I truly missed about my Air Force, about not having the Air Force career. I love being upside down, any which way in an airplane. The freedom, the sense of chasing clouds.
Yeah.
High flight makes me cry.
Yeah.
I read it and I cry.
I completely understand that.
In fact, I came back from Japan, and my son-in-law invited me to join his family at an air show in London, and the F-18 performance machine was putting on a show, the Top Gun show, and I cried watching him put on a show. That's fun.
That is, yeah. I think there's no words for it. I mean, I haven't done the high-power type flying you've done, but even the stuff I do, it's a unique experience.
Yeah. I never the 86. What did it have? 11,000 pounds of thrust, or something, maybe 13,000. It was the most powerful engine. The Orenda 14 is what we were using. I just can't remember the numbers, but relative to the F-18, it was.
Oh yeah. It was weak.
It was a sparkler.
Exactly. It was just, exactly. So looking back on your whole career, like you've had very, very long, very very fascinating career to look back upon. I think with a lot of pride, and I can see that, and I can understand why. Any particular moments really stand out for you when you look back?
I can't really think. I mean, I told somebody one day that I'd never worked a day in my life, which was not right, because I had a staff position.
So you worked a couple days.
But I could not consider flying work.
Yeah.
It was just the thing to do.
I have a saying that I use when people ask me about my job, and I wasn't an Air Force pilot. I've been a civilian pilot for 20 years, and I always say it beats working for a living.
Exactly. And I had an apprehension when I left the Air Force that I would be bored flying commercial. I never had a boring moment in my life. I just I mean, to me, the challenge was different.
It is different, yeah.
I had had an experience when I was on the squadron flying Sabres with one of the very best pilots I probably would ever have the opportunity to meet. I flew on his wing one day in a Sabre, and he took me through a whole mission in cloud, cloud penetrations and all the rest of it. When we weren't fighting, I was on his wing. I never knew when he turned. I never had any idea when he turned. I was just tucked on his wing. He could take me anywhere, and I thought, if I could only be and he happened to be the best gunner that had ever that had ever been to that point in the Air Division. He won the Kazoo shoot over and over again. And so I took that with me into the commercial airline business and said, I don't want the passengers to know that they've been on an airplane ride when they get out at the other end. I just want them to know that they were comfortable and happy the whole time. And if I could do that, then sometimes you don't have much control. You get some pretty bad turbulence here and there, and you have to live with it. You get some windy crosswinds landings.
If that's happened, yeah.
But as far as I was concerned, if you could master that and keep the passengers happy, that was more than enough to satisfy me. Ever.
That's a good goal to shoot for. So I have one last question for you. What advice would you have to anyone who's going to start flying this thing?
Enjoy it.
Enjoy it. That's some good advice.
It is. You've flown the Vampire, haven't you?
I've flown in the Vampire, and I've handled it, but I'm not checked out on it.
Oh.
So
you're going all that. Are you allowed to do aerobatics?
Yes.
Just enjoy it.
I might have to take you up for a rip sometime.
You
can show me a few things.
I dream about that.
Yeah.
One of the things I really used to like to do in the T-Bird, and it was one of the show-off things you kind of did for your A1 rating. You'd try and do something just a little bit different. I'd go up to 35,000 feet. I'd put the throttle at idle, and I would do aerobatics until I got down to 10,000 feet. Anything that it would fit on an idle airplane. The other thing I used to like to do was vertical rolls and vertical eights. And they're all doable, and you don't have to pull a lot of G. I don't think I ever pulled more than 3.5 or 4 G.
Oh wow, okay.
Because once you're at the top of a vertical 8, you're just about stalled anyway, so you can't pull. You just got to.
The nose is going to fall
over the end, and it was always. I never to try it. It's something you can't describe, isn't it?
No.
Somebody goes on a roller coaster and you say, "Oh, that was fun. That was such a good ride." I think it's the roughest damn ride you ever had. It's fun in its own way. But I could do anything in the T-Bird and never jar a bone. That's fun for me.
Yeah, absolutely. But like you said, you mastered the T-Bird. The T-Bird was your airplane.
I thought so.
Well, I'm sure you're right. It's wonderful.
So I just wish you a heck of a pile of fun.
I'm looking forward to it. I've managed to interact with the guys who do fly it, and it looks like a lot of fun. So it'll be quite the interesting deviation for me as an airline pilot. That'll be part of the excitement.
But you got a panel in there that you're not going to be ashamed of.
Oh yeah, I got HSI, I got GPS. I mean, it's all modern. I don't have to worry about doing NDB approaches and all that stuff.
It amazes me. I remember looking at my dad and saying he went from horses to buses to trucks. He drove.
Yeah.
And here I was, starting out in an airplane with an NDB, and not much more.
Yeah.
It was a big advance when we got to the rotating compass card with the NDB needle.
Oh yeah, of course.
In the card.
Like an R9.
That was huge advance.
No kidding.
And then to end up on a 767, where if the weather's bad enough, you just let the airplane land itself.
Just watch it do its job.
And know that it's doing exactly the right thing.
Yeah. Well, Squadron Leader Wilke, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're most welcome.
It was wonderful.
This has been just a barrel of fun.
Absolutely. We'll have to do it again sometime. You're always welcome.
Thank you.